Every day, 16 individuals overdose in the state of Florida. Sarasota County has the highest child removal rates of any county in Florida. Since January, there have been 36 children born substance exposed. This disease is an equal opportunity offender. It does not care what race, creed, color, or economics for anyone who's involved with this. On February 25th, the Humanity Working to End Genocide partnered with Sarasota Ministerial Association and the Jewish Federation to host a symposium on the opiate epidemic. Today, you will hear some of those stories.
It is with the utmost of pleasure that I welcome you to our program, Opioid Crisis, Is Your Family at Risk? I want to answer the question, why has Humanity Working to End Genocide, the Sarasota Ministerial Association, the Diocese of Venice, the Jewish Federation, Drug Free Sarasota, and the Florida Studio Theater all joined together to present this afternoon's program? The reason is the opioid crisis is the major problem affecting our community, our state, and our nation. We want you to understand the gravity of this situation. We want you to take the materials you found at your seat home with you, to be read, to be discussed with your family, to be shared with your friends, and kept uppermost in your minds as you realize how serious the drug problem is today. In Florida alone, 5,725 men, women, and children die each year as a result of drug overdose. That adds up to 16 individuals losing their lives every day in the state of Florida. Please pay close attention to our panel of experts who will speak to you today. Please pay heed to the two mothers who will share their stories of addiction in their family and the price each family member pays in living with this reality. We begin the process today and will continue to bring our message to our community in the weeks and months ahead. First, we want to protect you and your family. Next, we want this message to be shared with your friends. And finally, take this information with you to your clergy person and give them the story that you will hear today, so that in their house of worship, in your house of worship, you share it with the congregation as you include more and more people in learning about the risks we face in dealing with the opioid crisis. Together, all of us working together, we will prevail. We will protect our family and our community. We will work together to end the opioid addiction. Together, we will make the tomorrows of our family brighter and better for all. Let the process begin today. And let us devote our time and our energy to solving this problem and ridding our community of the threat of drug addiction. Together, we can do this. Together, we will prevail.
My name is Mary Ann Servian. Every day, there are new reports of the epidemic nature of opioid addiction. Leaders in every field are looking for a way out of this crisis. More education, prevention, addiction treatment, and mental health support are clearly the way forward. Recent state funding of $53.5 million will go to agencies that provide addiction and mental health support. There will also be much needed updates to the prescription database. For the first time, there will be limits to the amount of Schedule II painkillers that can be prescribed, such as OxyContin and fentanyl. The federal budget also has $10 billion in discretionary spending for opioid treatment. Shocking, more people are dying from opioid overdoses and illicit illicit drugs than car accidents and gun violence. As you've heard, in Florida, there are 16 people a day who are dying from this epidemic. In the nation, by the end of January 2017, there were 64,070 opioid and drug overdose deaths. That's 175 people a day. That is an airplane full of people crashing every day. The impact to the family, to the community, to law enforcement, to medical and workplace, it's a staggering $100 billion in economic loss. This crisis affects all of us. The child welfare system is overburdened, taking in one child every 2 minutes. On any given day, there are over 400,000 children in foster care. Up to a third of them are a result of being removed because of drug use in the family. There are 1 million grandparents raising their children because their parents are drug addicted. I would venture to guess that there are few families that have escaped the painful emotions of watching a loved one fight their addiction. Many, sadly, know the tragedy of one losing that battle. Many of you have maybe suffered the shock and humiliation of your loved one being arrested for drugs and then facing a lifetime with that stigma. On a personal basis, I stand before you as the mother of a son, that has struggled with mental health and drug issues for 25 painful years. In 2005, I had the privilege of serving as mayor of the wonderful city of Sarasota, and I received the call that my son had been arrested for drug possession. For many years, I carried the burden of his drug use as a secret, lest I be judged or embarrassed or humiliated. Well, the secret was out on the front page of the newspaper, of course. But since then, I have tried to help other families that are dealing with this struggle, offering a sympathetic ear, casting no judgment, and offering to steer them to places of help. During my years as a city commissioner, I watched the growing homeless population as the drug crisis morphed into a national epidemic. I witnessed the destruction caused by years of neglected mental health issues and having people self-medicate to deal with it. Working with many of the wonderful agencies in this community, such as Salvation Army, Coastal Recovery, First Step, and use of the VIPER program, I have seen firsthand the remarkable results of recovery and redemption. To update you on my son, today, at age 40, he is still struggling to stay sober. He's lost everything but hope. He is in a residential treatment program. This is the 4th time around. He has spent 3 different times in jail. It has cost myself and my family tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds and hundreds of sleepless nights. I can't begin to tell you this addiction affects everyone, not just the addict, the entire family, everyone he's ever worked with, anyone who's cared about him. My hope is if you or a loved one is dealing with drug addiction, that you will have a better sense today of what you can do and how to get help. My hope for all of you is to be able to put your head down at night at rest.
I think that was an extremely, not only powerful story, but personal recognition with what it means to deal with this crisis. I'd like each of my guests and our guests here today to introduce yourselves and tell us the organization you're with.
Lynette McClellan, and I am a pastor at the Center of Hope of South County in Nokomis, Florida.
I'm PJ Brooks. I'm the Vice President of Outpatient Services for First Step of Sarasota.
I'd like to start with Mr. Brooks. We hear that it's a secret often, and I think our former mayor, Mary Ann, almost mentioned that you don't tell people. Can you open up and tell us about the crisis and how it affects everyone?
What we're dealing with is statistically speaking, 1 out of 10 and maybe 1 out of 7, according to the Surgeon General, individuals are dealing with the disease of addiction. That is a huge number. So it is unlikely that you have not had an experience with it. We're dealing with a crisis that unfortunately is still being measured morally. And it's not being looked at as a disease, which it has been labeled since the late 50s by the American Medical Association.
I think your point, it's a disease we're measuring morally, is such a deep thought. Pastor, can you comment on that?
What I can say is that an individual that suffers from such a debilitating disease as substance abuse or alcoholism, it does take you down a road that you've never been before. As being in recovery myself for 32 years, I know firsthand what that is to go down that road, because I lost everything as a result of that. And most importantly, I lost myself. And it was always about me. And until I got to a place that I could humble myself, I couldn't reach out to get help.
For each of you, I would like this question. What is the most important thing you think the public should know? And let's start with you, PJ.
I think the most important thing that the public should know is that they need to understand that help is available, and that by being open and willing to seek help, they're going to have access. If you don't ask, you don't get. And right now, there are services and supports out there, and we've got to drop the embarrassment, the shame, and the guilt, and we have to be willing to look at this as a chronic, incurable, but treatable disease.
Anything to add to that, Pastor?
I feel strongly that as a community that we need to put our arms and embrace this because it is affecting our community. It's affecting our faith community as a whole. And unless we as pastors open up our churches for recovery and allow our people to talk about this and to come to a place where they don't have to hide from it anymore, where they don't have the shame and they don't have the stigma that's attached to that. I do believe by doing that, by opening our arms up to those that do come to our churches, to the mothers, to the grandmothers that are suffering, to the individuals that are suffering from this, those who have lost loved ones, if we can come together as a community and be prepared as pastors, as rabbis, as priests in our community to give them the information that they need in order to get help, then we can make a difference and possibly turn this around by joining forces and being community-minded.
And what is the first step a person should take?
Is admitting that they have a disease.
We're going to hear another very powerful story from a mother in just a moment.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lisa Brandy, and I am founder of Brandy's Wish Foundation, which was created in 2011 after the tragic overdose death of my 18-year-old daughter, Brandy Shea Mishad. Many of you know our story. You've heard me speak throughout the last 7 years, but for those that who don't know, Brandy was 17 when she found herself trapped in a cycle of addiction to prescription medication. As her parents, we did everything that we could, which we thought was best. We sought out professionals. We had her go to wilderness treatment. After that, we put her in a boarding school for those suffering with addiction and other mental health issues. And she thrived during that time, but it was always a struggle. And when she returned to Florida, after nearly 18 months of sobriety, she made a decision one night to use one pill, and in that decision-making process, we found our daughter not breathing the next morning after we searched for her because she didn't show up at a family get-together in which I called for hours and hours searching for her. This is something I don't want one other parent to ever have to experience. The finding of your child not breathing, something so preventable. What I'd like to do today is read a few things from her journal. In some ways, it's the gift that she left behind, but it's all I have left of her. And if you don't mind, and be patient, please. Brandy wrote in her journal what addiction felt like to her. And she said, addiction isn't any ordinary monster. It's like a giant octopus weaving its tentacles not just around you, but through you, squeezing not hard enough to kill you, but enough to keep you from really feeling until you try to get away. Try and you hunger for its grasping clutch, the way its tendrils pop you up, your need intensifying exponentially every minute you refuse to admit its being. It's hard to understand what that's like unless you're living it, and this is why I'd like to ask our communities, our faith-based communities, to be the compassion, to be those hands and feet, because when you are in active addiction, you can't help yourself. You need support, you need help, you need guidance, you need unconditional love. And to help the parents and be there for parents who are also going through this because they're struggling and suffering, trying to figure out a way to help their beloveds stay alive. And that is really what it's about, staying alive. Brandy also wrote about shame. And what I know as a mother of a daughter who was addicted to opioids, there's a lot of shame. There is so much shame that it's shameful, if I can say that. Those suffering feel shame. Those helping our beloveds feel shame because of the way so many of us have been treated. We have to change the stigma. You have to understand this is a reoccurring chronic condition, no different than diabetes or asthma. And we don't shame people who have asthma or are diabetics. She wrote about shame, and she said, shame revisits me unexpectedly. I'm floating on clouds, then black, black, black. Demons claw through my core. They want their old friend back. I'm too tired to fight. It's like trying to walk through traffic untouched or staying dry in the middle of a thunderstorm. Hopeless. They will devour every entire part of my being until I am eternally theirs, and it won't even stop then. Hopeless. This is how they feel. And our babies who are so young, we're talking 14, 15, 16-year-olds who are coping with so much, and then they're coping with that. And then they're dealing with stigma and shame on top of it. There are a few other things I'd like to read to you because you're going to hear statistics and numbers and all that stuff. And we see it on the media every day, but I think it's important that we know all those facts, but I think it's important that we give this a face and we be the heart and the feet and the hands, like I have said. This is what my daughter wrote about her plans for her future. I have big plans for my life after Trails. After I leave Trails, I want to work really hard to catch up on my academics and athletics at whatever boarding school I go to. I want to be at Oakley, which was her boarding school. But I don't know yet. It might be Greenbrier. When I'm at boarding school, I want to retake the SATs, reapply to all of the colleges I applied to at the beginning of the year, if not better ones. While I'm at boarding school, I also want to continue working on my relationship with myself, my parents, my sisters, my God. I want to work really hard to become a strong, positive female role model in my sisters' lives. I want to graduate from boarding school, confident in my ability to remain drug-free through my transition into college. I also want to start regularly attending yoga festivals with my mommy over summer. And once I'm in college, I want to work really hard to find an interest in a future for myself that really excites me. I think I will apply to social media schools in my college and start majoring in journalism or broadcast journalism. If that ends up not appealing to me, I would like to get involved with something in pre-law or crime department. I plan on graduating college and potentially continuing on my academic career in graduate school to get my master's. After that, I see myself traveling and enjoying my youth and having me time. I don't want to settle down immediately and get stressed, but eventually I want to fall in love and start a beautiful family and become the best mommy ever. I want to be successful on my own, though, and be the breadwinner of my family. I don't want to have to rely on my hubby and be screwed over, forgive her language, if it all goes south, which it won't, she put in parentheses. And I want to die a peaceful death in my sleep and not be buried but cremated and spread all over a beautiful place. Things I would like to get out of the rest of my experience is practice. I want to work really hard to practice being respectful, watching my impulses and my tone. I want to keep practicing on my patience and being aware of the way my intimidating personality can be. I want to show my parents that I am capable of change. It takes hard work and practice, but I'm doing it. I want to share something I've not yet shared before. I just spent the last month, after 7 years, making these dreams of Brandy's come true, and I took her ashes with me. And I began in Paris, where we made a promise we would dance under the Eiffel Tower together one day, but she died before I could do that with her. And I took her ashes everywhere we've been together, in different places in the world, and those we dreamed and talked about being together. This is not something I want another parent to have to do, to have to take their ashes and have that journey with them, even though I'm grateful, because I know without a doubt, even more so now, that she is in a place I can't wait to get to. But I would much have rather done it with her in person, to see her expression, hear her words, and not just hear them the way I think she was speaking in spirit to me. And I'd also like to read one last thing to you. And it was a love letter she wrote to herself. And I say this because we need to understand that this is all about love and God is love. And those of us that claim to be faith-based ministries need to be like the experience I had in Lourdes. If you're familiar with Lourdes, they come from all over the world to be healed. We need to be that location, Lourdes, to our Sarasota Bradenton community, where they can come with whatever healing they need and we give it to them. Brandy wrote, I am writing this love letter to you, Brandy, to show you all of the good qualities about yourself that you tend to forget at times. You are a strong, capable, independent young woman. I love your outspokenness, your ability to have no fear and say whatever is on your mind or what you believe in. You have always embraced your independence and leadership abilities, and you motivate people, and that is awesome. That plays something into something else I love about you. You have the ability to lighten the mood, to motivate people with your sense of humor, and to give love. It's one of a kind. I'm one of a kind. I appreciate all of the effort I've put into making changes into yourself in your life. You came to Trails for the most part with a driven and positive attitude to change. Your determination is what has allowed us to work through this program, and you are a good big sister and you love your family with all your heart. Keep up the great work, Brandy. Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. I love you, Brandy Shamey Shad. Love, Brandy. We need to remind them to love themselves, and we need to love them unconditionally. We need to change our language and not call them junkies or pillheads. There's so much bullying that goes on out there that it's tough enough just being them and struggling and suffering with their disease. The last thing I am going to read, and I appreciate your patience, is the simple prayer that St. Francis of Assisi left us. And I will read it because I want you to think about it and to become this and be the change in our communities that we so desperately need. It is unacceptable to lose 16 or more lives every day. It's unacceptable. At what point do we say enough? At what point do we do more? St. Francis wrote, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, unity. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is darkness, light. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you for being the hands and feet that St. Francis of Assisi talks about, and working on keeping our children and our community members alive so that God's will may be active in their life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We could not be more touched and moved, but more importantly, called to action by your words. We're called to action. And on that note, I would like to ask this question of Pastor Lynette. Since the Ministerial Association and the ministries, our churches, our synagogues are all involved in this program, what is the role of prayer in addiction?
The role to prayer in addiction is warfare. We are definitely in a time of warfare. And when I talk about warfare, that doesn't mean that you just say a little prayer and that you stop. But warfare is something that when you're storming, you're standing together, you're standing in the gap for that family, for that individual, for that loved one, and that you will see it all the way through. I think as pastors, sometimes we ignore what's standing in front of us. And as pastors, we need to embrace these people that come in because they're all God's children. Every one of us are God's children, and He has a plan and a purpose for all of us. We talk about being the hands and feet. When we are going to be the hands and feet, it's going to require something of us, and it requires us to get involved, to participate, and most importantly, to walk in love. Because perfect love casts out all fear, and we need to walk in a place of love. We need to walk in a place of authority, and we need to walk in a place that we can understand. You can't understand something that you're not going to pray for. You can't understand something that you're not going to get involved with, and you can't understand something that you haven't lived through. Quit turning them away. We need to embrace them. We need to love them, and we want to see them healed and to see them set free. That's what it's about. People want to be set free. They're in a prison they can't get out of. I know that prison. I was there. We've heard 2 mothers that talked about it. I have a son that has struggled with addiction and who is clean and sober right now. And by the grace of God, I am so blessed with that. But I also know what it is to lose them. I also know what it is as a pastor to go to their funerals and to perform their funerals. And no one wants to do that. But as a man and woman of God, we need to pray for our communities. We need to come together as our communities, and we need to love them right where they're at and try to give them hope. They have no hope. It is our job to give them hope. And as a pastor, I pray that each and every person that watches this, that you will have a heart of compassion and that you will quit turning them away, but you will love them and you'll love their families and you will embrace them right where they're at.
PJ, would you like to add anything?
There's not a child in this world who had a choice in who their parents are. There's not a person in this world that had a choice with what this disease that is a genetic disease. No one raised their hand to sign up for this. And I think that's when we speak about, as we heard here, that this is a disease that requires love. It requires that, and it requires us to just say, you know what, we accept you for who you are, and then we move forward. So I really appreciate what you said.
And as Lisa said, her daughter did have hope. She wanted to dance under the Eiffel Tower. That image is so beautiful. And when they don't have hope, as Pastor said, it is up to us to be the hope for them, to be the wings and to be the strength. So the call today is for every community leader, for every rabbi, every priest, every reverend, every person in a psychological association, every human being to reach out and be that strength. Today, we have many people to thank because this is a community-wide effort that has just begun. It has begun with, and I have to read these, the Office of the Sheriff, the Sarasota Police Department, the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, the Jewish Federation, the Argus Foundation, the Sarasota Ministerial Association, Florida Studio Theater, the Downtown Merchant Association, the NAACP, and many, many more who have participated. It is the beginning. And now I'd like to introduce Reverend Tom Pfaff.
I'm going to ask everyone right where you're at right now to repeat after me the question. Saying aloud the question, is my family at risk?
Is my family at risk?
One more time, is my family at risk?
Is my family at risk?
Lisa, whose teenage daughter died, says yes. Mary Ann, whose son for 20 plus years has been in and out of prison, says yes. PJ, who every month after month after month, reports to all the agencies the number of people who die, 16 a day in Florida, every month. My wife, Nicolette, and I lost our son, Joshua Thomas, so we know the sting of death. And I know that you don't want to feel that sting, like we don't want to feel that sting for our millennial daughter, Rebecca. So there are 3 things that we can do together. Thing number 1 is please go to the ministerial Facebook page, Sarasota Ministerial Association Facebook page, and there you can download this brochure, Save a Life brochure. In it, it tells you the symptoms of someone who is in an overdose and the wonderful laws of Florida that make you immune for reporting it and make even the person who's overdosing immune for prosecution. It also shares great organizations, 5 of them that have been mentioned that you can contact, those contact information. So please download that brochure. Then have a conversation, as PJ and all of us again and again have suggested, with your children and your grandchildren. And there is another brochure talking to our kids that'll help you with that. Please download that. And then there's also, and almost finally, a sheet that you can download before you go to see your doctor. Have the conversation of all the options, of all the alternatives for pain medication that are not opiate-based. And finally, let's join Sister Lynette and Lisa and all of
Come
us
to the stage.
in prayer. Because, you know, I can't, but God can. So together we shall. Together we shall.
Amen.
And amen.